What is Catholic morality? What's the code of behavior that, as Catholics, we are committed to? What are the principles for living that one can draw from Catholic Christianity, as distinct from, say, the common sense rules that we should be able to work out for ourselves by looking at how others manage in the family or the workplace or in social life at large? The Catholic Church claims authority to teach on faith and morals. So what are the morals that we are bound to live by, specifically as Catholic Christians, and not simply as human beings? Well, according to public opinion, what distinguishes Catholics in matters of morality is anxieties about contraception, promiscuity, divorce, gay marriage, gender transitioning, abortion, the obligation to provide basic nursing for the comatose in opposition to euthanasia, and in a very different sphere of life, the need for the religious education of children. Certainly, these are all matters on which faithful Catholics think differently from mainstream opinion in the West today. And yet, in that list that I gave you, there is in fact very little that can be called distinctively Catholic. Having a right judgment about these matters, the ones I listed, is simply a question of getting things into perspective as a human being. So far from being distinctively Catholic teachings, the Church refers to the operative principles in these areas as truths of the natural law. Truths of the natural law. That means what any society whose human heart was sound would accept, even if it had never heard of Jesus Christ, or the apostles, or the church. The trouble is that on these topics, our society, Western society, has broken with an older tradition of civility, of decent living, once common to all humane people, and left the church holding the baby, sometimes literally so, as for instance in hospices in Ethiopia for children whose parents have contracted AIDS. To inquire about the distinctive Catholic understanding of the moral life, one that is genuinely distinct from the simply human, one would do better to put down that baby, literal or metaphorical, and pick up instead St. Luke's Gospel, opened at the passage we've just heard. St. Luke's summary of the ethical teaching of our Lord in today's Gospel is clearly not about being an ordinarily decent member of natural society. The ethic set forth in this Gospel goes quite beyond our normal and perfectly reasonable sense of what it is to act fairly by others. Here we are commanded rather to love those who hate us and who work against us. We are bidden never to charge interest on a loan. We are told to refrain from ever condemning those who do us harm, and to give and give again until it hurts, and so on. That is the distinctively evangelical and therefore the distinctively Catholic set of moral norms. But But surely, the pagan will say, it's simply not realistic. Any social order that tried to put this code into practice would prove unsustainable. I reply, possibly so. Gospel ethics look impracticable because they are for humanity as made in the image of the Son, Jesus Christ, for people made as the Father intends us to be. So here we come up against the fact that Catholic Christianity is not primarily a teaching, including a moral teaching, at all. Primarily, it is a way of salvation. What does that mean? It means it's a way of so sharing the power and the freedom of God that we have resources to live by, resources of moral effort included, that go deep into the life of God Himself. In a kind of divine madness, in an excess of unreasonable folly, as St. Paul puts it, God entered this world in the person of His Son to make Himself vulnerable in the weakness of Jesus Christ, all with a view to humbling human pride and remaking us to His own image. And that means, then, that we can now begin to live, at least on occasion, with a touch of the extravagant generosity that the gospel ethic demands. Extravagant generosity. That's more like it. That's more like it, where a distinctively evangelical and Catholic ethos is concerned. And if you don't believe me, just look at the lives of the saints.